Objection, Judge. I think it calls for speculation. She's indicated she has reviewed all of the body cam, but there has been no indication as to which body cam this came from.
If she can answer it.
The body cams of the first two officers going into the bedroom had the most information about location of persons and objects before being moved by the officers or being directed to be moved by the officers.
Okay, and in this picture, which would be 80D again, you can see the stained spot that you were talking about with the ladies and gentlemen of the jury earlier, correct?
Again, the quality of this picture is very poor, but I do know where there were saturations on the carpet based on all of my review of materials in this case.
Can you see the end of the bed?
I see what I think is the footboard of the bed.
Okay. Can you see what's on the bed?
In this picture, you just see that it's a dark object. Based on the totality of the documentation, I know what that object is.
Okay, and what object is that?
It was a handgun.
Okay. And do you know which of the handguns that it was?
Yes.
Okay, which one?
Based on all of the documentation I had, this would be the gun that was Mr. Banfield's identified as his duty weapon.
The Glock 19M, would that be it?
That sounds right.
Okay. Now, just looking at what we know about this, so you know where the gun is, even though you're saying it's a dark object, and that's, you know where the corner of the bed is, correct?
I know that the firearm, when first officers arrived in the scene, it was laying on the southeast corner of the mattress.
Okay. And so you know where the blood stain is related to the southeast corner of the mattress, correct?
The blood stain was later identified on the sheet removed from the mattress.
Do you know, we're talking about the saturated blood stain that you spoke about quite often in your direct testimony, that's at the foot of the corner of the bed.
Yes, there were multiple saturation stains on the carpet.
Okay.
One was near the southeast corner of the bed on the carpet.
Okay. And were you also, did you also review the 911 tape of the call from Fairfax County, or to Fairfax County?
I did listen to 911 recording.
Okay. Do you recall my client's statements about shooting an unknown person in the room?
I don't remember the specific verbiage. I remember that there was a reference to an injured person and a shooting.
Okay. And I'm not that worried about the detail, but what I am interested in is when he identified himself as shooting Joe Ryan, the police said, "Where are the guns now?" Do you recall that?
I don't specifically recall.
Okay. Do you recall them telling whomever was on the 911 tape, make sure the guns are visible?
Again, I don't remember the exact wording of the call.
Okay. And so you don't actually remember that from the 911 about the gun?
I don't remember the specific words that were said. I do remember specifically reviewing that there was reference to an injured person in a shooting, that was the basis for officers going to the scene.
Okay. And so would it be possible if that gun that's showing on the corner of the bed was put in the blood stain saturation that you've talked about today prior to making the 911 call?
Well, I don't know prior to the 911 call. Those are things that I can't know.
Okay.
I will say that the blood stain all along that complete side of the gun, the exposed side as you're looking at it, that it did have what appeared to be transfer. And certainly if the gun had been laid in a saturation or in a blood pool, then that would be a scenario that could not be excluded as how the blood stains came to be on that side of the gun.
Okay. And if that was left in the position that's in for purposes of the first responders, would that be something that could be tested to determine what the DNA was on, that gun itself?
If the gun itself, as it's laying there, someone could swab it and submit that swab for analysis.
Do you know if that ever happened?
That I don't know.
Okay. You never received any records of an analysis of what was on the gun?
I don't recall getting analysis of any swabbing of the gun itself.
Okay. But that would have been the most direct way to determine if there was blood or blood of a certain person or some other basis upon which to draw a conclusion if that was swabbed, correct?
To determine the DNA profile, that would be, I would think a preferable method would have been to swab it there as it's laying there. However, the gun was not left in that position. So,
Okay.
so there were some other things to consider as far as what would be tested and what would not be tested.
Oh, so when you're talking about not being left in this position that's showing here, you're talking about when the first responders moved it to the other side of the bed?
It was officers that moved it, and this gun was moved twice.
Okay.
Based on the body cams, that's what I saw.
Okay. But the DNA analysis of this area, including those saturated, soaked blood stains, I think there were 2 of them. There are a number of other stains on the mattress. The only one that was tested was the one that's right underneath the gun, where on the bedding that was underneath the gun. Isn't that correct?
Okay. If I can take them one at a time. I did not see stains on the mattress. That simply wasn't included in images that I saw of the scene. The images that I saw, I could not identify blood stains on the mattress or on that sheet that was on the bed. There was more than 2 saturations on the carpet. Tell me what else you put in there.
Yeah, so I'll work with you on that. Let's go through it. The 2 big saturations on the carpet. You never saw any testing of those 2 big saturations, correct?
I'm sorry, I really don't recall. I have to go back to see if any of those were specifically tested. The one directly in front of the chest of drawers would really be no reason to test that, because in the context of the scene, we know the source.
Okay.
The one closest to the foot of the bed could be tested either by sampling the saturation of the carpet itself, or there was some clothing that was partially covered some saturation, but also was stained, and that could be tested for DNA. And then there's saturation over by the dog bed that's a distance away.
Okay. And would it surprise you to know that none of those saturated positions were tested?
I wouldn't be surprised at that.
But that would give you information that would be helpful in arriving at whatever conclusion you're trying to arrive at, right?
That depends on the extent of the analysis. Like I said, the one stain pattern, there's really no reason to test, because we could see in the context of the scene, particularly in the body cams, the source of that, because the source was laying in that area when officers arrived. The other could be tested, as I say, either directly from the carpet itself or objects on the carpet that were also stained.
Now, the firearm itself, that would be something that you would probably want to be tested, correct?
I would probably have preferred that it be tested directly from that, but also consider the fact that it was moved twice by officers in the scene. So before I would look at any results on that, I'd want to know more about the officers moving it to be sure that they didn't disrupt it. That's certainly a consideration, and look at the pattern,
Okay.
if not the DNA.
And just so you're clear, you're talking about it being moved twice after what we're seeing on this picture, which is at the corner of the bed.
Yes, it was moved twice after officers initially entered the bedroom.
And is it possible that the gun in the position that you can see my client, even though it's dark, that gun was to his right-hand side, laying in that pool of blood that had saturated that carpet prior to it being put up on the bed?